Why, hello everybody. My name is Steve Usher and a warm welcome to the Experienced Designers podcast. Well, hello everybody and welcome to season 2 of the Experienced Designers. I am super excited to be here, to be just kind of a bit of an announcement today, just to share like what's in store for season 2. And a really exciting one, which I will share in literally 1 minute. But just want to share a little bit about kind of season 1, really. I think I had a lot of fun. It took me to some really interesting places. I spoke to people from really kind of from all over the world, really, from South Africa to the UK, to US, to Germany, to Sweden. And I had a lot of fun on season 1, I have to say. Lots of learning. You get to learn a lot about the technicalities of podcasting. But also, I think for me, the biggest amazing thing for season 1 was I got to meet so many brilliant people. And some of them actually to this day are friends, which is a really good bonus of having your own podcast season. And topic wise, quite varied, focused a bit on things like design thinking, the experience economy, focused on little kind of moments in the journey, like candidate experience. What's the difference between employee engagement and employee experience? Delved into things like let's make HR superheroes, and versus things like humans and robots working together. So huge array, but still kind of under the badge of experience and employee experience specifically. But season 2 is going to be different for sure. And one of the really big significant differences for season 2 is that I have a brand new co-host. So Shani Persson, welcome to the Experienced Designers.
Thank you. Very excited to be here.
Superb. So listen, hey, for the audience, for this, who's ever listening out there, Shani Persson, who are you? Where are you? And what's your why?
Whew. Yeah, let's dive in the deep end, right?
Let's
Okay. Who am I? Yeah. I'm an interpreter, I think. I like being in between spaces. I am a mother and a total nerd for anything human development, people connection, experiences, culture, all those kinds of things. You'll probably learn more about me along the way. I am based in Malmö in the south of Sweden. And my why is to create context for people to thrive, people with mind, bodies, and souls, and to, in different ways, explore how that can come to be.
Amazing. And I'm very grateful that you've joined the show, and we're also joining up in other ways in terms of a new business as well. So whereas this is, clearly our focus here with the podcast is to bring absolutely some amazing stories and learnings and insights and our own insights as we go along for sure, and bring that out to the world. We're also literally just about to launch a experience design business as well.
Yes.
Or a human experience design business called Wonder. So definitely not here to kind of pitch that today, but absolutely, just to share out to the audience that, Shani and I have really come together and we've really explored how we can work together. And the podcast was really a natural element of that, really, I think one of the things that we definitely picked up was in Shani, that we both share a very common thing around being super curious and we love learning new stuff. I get called a magpie. Always love the shiny stuff out there, and that goes with my black and white hair. So I'll definitely take that one when I was called that. So, but definitely, I think we share that common passion for learning. And I can honestly say, hand on heart, is podcasting is such a privilege because you really get to experience recording a podcast with people, and that's quite an experience in itself, and actually a memorable moment more than anything else, for both yourself and also your guest as well. And you just get to jam and talk and explore and experiment, and that's really kind of some of our kind of core principles around what we're doing here.
Yeah, and I think there's also something that's very faithful to the whole field of experience design, right? That you start out with the notion that we don't have the answers. And
Absolutely.
we get to dive in and ask the questions and explore the different perspectives and the different angles and different ways. So this is also really a platform for conversation and for arriving with that humility of, listening, asking, hearing, experiencing ourselves, the different angles and perspectives that people bring in.
Yeah, definitely. And we are going to bring some brilliant perspectives to the audience, no doubt about it. So let's dive in a little bit. Let's just share what's your angle for the podcast. So just to share out. So the concept right now, and we're co-creating this. We're going to whether this stays the same in a years or 6 months, we don't know. We're just starting out. That's also a very important thing. Just move from talking to doing, and evolve along the way. But our thinking is that we're going to be bringing to you 2 episodes a month. So Shani's going to go kind of her way and find and deep dive and find some really interesting people to interview and to share their learning on a particular focus, which we'll share in a minute. And then same with myself is I'm going to be going on with my own focus and getting out in the world and finding some really interesting, curious ways of which we can really bring you some really thought-provoking inputs. And then what we're going to do is once a month, probably towards the end of the month, we're also going to release an episode, probably quite raw and just straight off the recorded press. We're going to do something what we're kind of calling, just because our names kind of lent to this in a really weird way, but we're kind of going to call it the little Shani and Steve show.
Yes, for sure.
I kind of like it.
It has such a good ring. Yeah.
Who knows where this is going to take our profession? Let me tell you. So the Shani and Steve show. What we're going to do is we're going to go off on our travels. But what we're going to come back is, and we're going to use the Shani and Steve show to share perspective on what we heard and what we learned as part of our own intrepid adventures, but also to cover off some of the things that we're hearing and seeing in the industry as well. And I think that's really topical right now because things are moving so fast out there, and we need to just keep ourselves in check because we're very good at jumping on new narratives, particularly in this space. And we're here to support, we're here to challenge, we're here to also just put a break on stuff and just question things a little bit more. And we want to do that in a bit of a kind of in a debate and a discussion, which we'll be doing once a month. So for you lucky listeners, it means you get 2 focused podcasts a month. And then you get the Shani and Steve show, reflection show, once a month as well, as we talk about some of those pieces. So, Shani, how does that sound to you?
Yeah, I'm excited to get started. I think I always have a lot of questions flying around my head. So it's fun to have a platform where we can discuss them.
Yes, very much so. Very much so. So, Shani, let's take a little bit, not too much of it. We don't want to give it all away, but let's give the audience, what are you going to be focusing on?
I'm going to go big. Journey? I'm going to go far and wide. And really, I think the core question I'm sitting with right now is what does it actually mean to create a human experience? Mm-hmm. What can that mean from different angles? And I'm not really sure where exactly it's going to take me. I have a very open mind about it. It can really be anything from neuroscience to spirituality to, public sector work. I'm willing to go to a lot of different places to explore how do we make and create contexts that are good for people. So I'm going to keep it pretty open, and we'll see where the path goes. Usually there is a red thread in the end. We'll discover it as we go along, I think.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Oh, that's really well framed. Very nice. Very nice. Um,
What about
okay.
you? Yeah.
So where I'm curious at the moment, I'm going to go a little bit more granular, I think. So my first port of call for now is I'm going to delve a little bit more on onboarding, employee onboarding. So it's quite specific. And the reason being is if I look at the industry and some of the hot topics, and of course it's an easy one to go hybrid working, and let's delve in. That's obviously a big key topic right now. But I wanted to maybe just go a little bit more in onboarding. And the reason for that is it's been really top of mind for me recently. Over the last, I'd say last year and particularly this year, I've been really involved in those kind of projects. So, and as part of my own learning on how to design onboarding, and some of these have been the very first projects that I've been involved with, is I've picked up a load of learning and insights to go, hey, this is cool. How can I share this out externally? But also on my journey, I've found some really cool people doing very specific and really focused work in the onboarding design area. And that's both from the world of like literally research and how do you like create frameworks that really underpin a really great onboarding journey, to people who are like literally in kind of head of global onboarding roles, for an example. So I'm gonna just deep dive on that for now. It's a very specific moment. And I'm kind of thinking about 3 or 4 episodes. I don't know. I'll leave it at that. And I'll see where that then takes us, because I think the way the world has changed, onboarding has really kind of struck to me as a really key moment in getting people. We know, obviously, getting people into the organization is very, very important. But how we build this human connection, how do you create this experience that really gets people connected into your culture, into your way of working? And obviously tap onto that, the hybrid approach as well, where people aren't in a physical space anymore. How do you build that connection? And it's quite an interesting challenge, I think. So I'll leave it there. I could go on for more, as you can tell.
Yeah,
But
but it's nice.
I'm gonna kind of angle it and play around with it with different people's perspectives and how people have created these onboarding experiences.
Amazing. So basically we get the big concepts and philosophical thought, or wherever I might take you, and then you will talk a little bit more about the how. How can this
Yeah,
actually play out in different contexts? And the first one is then in the workspace and in onboarding.
absolutely,
Amazing. Yeah.
absolutely. And
I'm
also
excited.
just and also anyone listening out there, if you genuinely have, based on some of the topics we've shared today, if you do have very specific questions, or you have any specific, thoughts or areas that you want us to cover, or questions or things that are maybe top of mind for yourself concerning these topics, then please do get in touch. And you can do so by contacting hello@theexperiencedesigners.com. So that's hello@theexperiencedesigners.com. Or just tag us in a LinkedIn post. We will be sharing some content, so feel free also to comment on any of the LinkedIn posts or social posts that you see. Okay, so Shani, in the spirit of also the Shani and Steve show,
Yeah.
because Shani and I are really good. Some mornings when we kind of have a catch up and get ready for the day, we end up getting into kind of these theoretical conversations over a cup of tea. So I'm just we picked up on one, and I thought maybe let's do a little tester for the audience today about, let's talk about one particular narrative that we just got into a conversation about yesterday or the day before, and we were like, yeah, let's have a
Yeah.
chat about this on the pod.
Let's have a chat about this.
Let
Yeah.
me throw this over to you. You've looked at this a little bit closer than I, so I'm going to be more of the questioning and delving
Yeah.
in. But
Okay.
let's share the narrative and the perspective, and let's jump in.
Yeah. So one thing that popped onto my radar this week was the term quiet quitting.
Hmm.
And um, yeah, it is in its essence about quitting the idea of going above and beyond for your employer, and not how they define it, not subscribing to the hustle culture mentality. So this might mean that you say no to projects that are outside of your job description, or that you're not feeling interested in, or that you leave work on time, or that you don't answer messages outside of working hours.
Wow.
Okay. And this is called quiet quitting.
I my initial response is I don't even know what to say to that.
No.
Not going above and beyond, not responding to emails outside of work. I don't know what is this. Why are we framing this and creating a narrative around this? Why do you think this has happened?
Why it's happened? I don't
Yeah.
know. I think we have a tendency to want to label and simplify things quite a lot. And, you know, I always say it's complicated enough to be with yourself. So as soon as there's a collective, there's complexity. And I think we often try to kind of make up for that by simplifying. Um,
Mm.
in sometimes a way that maybe isn't beneficial to us, actually. um yeah, I think what came up for me is then when you continue reading about this quiet quitting, then there are all these warning signs. If you do this, then this might injure or hurt your career in some way, but it can also be a way to prevent burnout, or you know, is this just the opposite of active quitting, which is actually
Wow.
leaving a job?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So what it's saying is, by the script, just to play this back, this is what I've heard: is you have a job, to do,
yeah,
and obviously, if you do your job as described in your job description and you deliver on those, and that might be a 9 to 5, and then you go home, but you don't add any more, you don't go above and beyond, or you go from a place of that to actually drawing back and saying, I'm just going to do what I'm paid and focused to do,
yeah.
essentially. We're labeling that quiet quitting and has a potential impact on your ability to get, or to develop your career,
Yeah, I think,
as one of the potential
I mean, you've
downfalls
heard me talk
suggested.
about this. It's infuriating.
Yeah, because
um,
it suggests there's like it's a constant on off. Either you're doing it constantly or you
yeah,
turn it off. Who's to say that things don't? Well, they do, as we know. Things ebb and flow. Sometimes you're more engaged. Sometimes you're less engaged. Sometimes there's, I don't know, you're going through a divorce and actually you can't give that extra time because, quite frankly, it's not right to do that because you have your energy is being taken somewhere else or you're distracted. So the other human elements of our human experience, not just work,
yes,
right?
which we also want to show up to, right, as humans, and not just get the tired person after work. But yeah,
Mm.
I see a lot of these like false dichotomies, in a sense, where it's like, well, it's office or it's remote, or it's quiet quitting or it's active quitting. But for me, reading this, also there is a lot more nuance to the quiet quitting. Of course, there is a place you can come from when you do this, when you disengage,
Mm.
where you are feeling stagnated, frustrated, taken advantage of, tired of where you are. That's one place. There's also a place of a lot of these things that come into this, which are, you know, about creating focus, about clarity of priorities, about setting boundaries that are healthy for you, for your body, for your sleep, for the rest of your life, that can actually improve your engagement and improve your impact, if we look at what is being recommended, you know, from that point of view. So that's, I think, what I mean when I talk about oversimplifying, is they're taking this huge umbrella term, and not only are they taking an umbrella term, they're also taking it from the perspective of the corporation, of the employer. What would
Yeah,
this be called from the perspective of the human being?
correct.
And would there
And
be more names to this? Maybe we can
yeah,
break it down even further. I'm just saying examples that I know from a lot of research that I've done over the years, and I'm sure there are more, because I mean, definitely don't know everything. Um, yeah, but it's just interesting to me that it's taking this angle of how this is a threat to your career, when actually a lot of the things that it's saying is here's how you set healthy boundaries. And why do we even have this ideal that
Mm,
overworking and overcommitting and over delivering as opposed to what you're hired for is what's necessary to advance?
correct.
Why
Correct.
is
I love
that?
that. I love that.
I
Great question.
mean, I always wonder that because I keep thinking, if I can't achieve in a day what needs to be achieved, either I'm doing something wrong or
Mm,
there's something wrong with the expectations, right?
mm, mm.
And there are many other things that can happen in there. So yeah, I'm also very critical of the perspective from which this is even being presented,
Mm.
because there isn't just one or two labels to this in my world.
Absolutely not. That's a really interesting one. I think that from the perspective of the organization, I would love. Why don't we look at a binary response to that label? So why don't we look at it from the perspective of the employee? That might be interesting. Although we're
Yeah.
going into the binary, but let's fight back with a binary response. What would be the perspective? What would be the words that we would use to say, yeah, but that's one way of looking at it. But from our perspective, it would be called X, Y, Z. Maybe we do a post on that one. I think we
Yeah,
could.
maybe it would be
Yeah, we
called
do.
a
We do a
healthy
post.
balance.
Yeah, correct.
I
Or
mean, so
yeah,
this is being pegged as something really negative, but if I'm looking at the components and if I'm bringing in the knowledge that we have of what generates focus and engagement for people, most of the elements in here would actually achieve more and better work from people rather than
mm,
a scattered effort where you're running in every direction trying to be a lot of different things.
yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, I'm very curious about how this came to be from that perspective, and we tell a lot of stories from that side.
Yes, we do.
A lot
Yes,
of
we do.
stories from that
Yes,
side,
we
and
do.
that's also then impacting how we solve it, which is a little bit what we're about, right? So
Yeah,
if we tell the story from that side, from the side of who's gaining the benefit on the monetary end, then it's a very different story from going in around and actually understanding, okay, what does this mean?
mm,
The people who are actually doing these actions and what's behind it, what's driving them, and what
mm,
are different things that can be driving this? Because I was reading a couple of articles and different comments, and there was a lot of debate around this. So we're not the
yeah,
only ones talking about it.
yeah,
Um, but it was also, yeah, we're always defending the corporate perspective and efficiency and productivity.
yeah,
And I'm always very curious what happens when we flip. We talk
yeah,
about this a lot.
yeah,
Productivity is a byproduct.
yeah.
It's not an end goal in its own. Like it's it's something that happens when you feel well and you have clear direction and you're feeling engaged. You will be efficient and productive.
Mm,
What happens
mm,
if we switch?
mm. What
I
would
don't know.
happen? I
Yeah,
don't
what
know.
would
We can discuss.
happen?
So, so as you can tell, we're going to get really topical in these conversations for sure, because I think it's an important time out there. It really is. We're in this really interesting phase, I think, of like human experience development, and particularly in the workplace component of that, which we from our perspective is still only a segment of a holistic kind of human experience, day to day, week to week, year to year. Um, but of course, if we just take that in isolation and just the sheer amount of disruption that's going on, and the sheer pace of change, and we all have been talking about this for decades. But I think we kind of gone with this really interesting where we've tipped the balance a little bit away from the organization for a period and given a little bit more freedom to the employee in many respects. But now I think as things start to settle is when that scale, I'm kind of, visualizing here, but as the scale starts to come back, how far back does that scale go back? And how much of a land grab can we do now to actually start to reshape things that will serve people better, not just exclusively organizations? Big questions, of course, and one perspective on this, but I think it's a really interesting time. And I've always said this in the recent years, the fact we are talking about designing employee experiences intentionally is a really positive step forward. We haven't really had anything like this in customer experience. Of course, it's been around for decades. Employee experience is still emerging, still evolving, and that's some of the areas I think we're going to be definitely delving into going forward. Is how is this discipline going to evolve? And I see it as a discipline. I really do. I think it's going to be a really interesting career area. I think it's going to be an interesting potential function. There are obviously companies doing it very, very well, but I still think it's a very small percentage of companies that are really doing it. A large proportion that I've seen are still trying to figure it out, Shani. They're trying to figure out what does this employee experience actually mean, like both to leaders, what value does it bring? What does it bring to the organization? What competence do we need in order to create this? What mindset, what culture do we need to have? So yeah, big ones, but necessary.
But can I throw a question in for you also? Because I think, I mean, I'm listening to you and I'm thinking, I'm probably not the only one wondering this.
Go on.
How do you see this being different to CX? Because you're saying customer experience and the CX field has been around for longer.
It has. It's a great question.
Human experience or people experience on the corporate side.
Yeah. It's a great question. It's a brilliant. You always come up with good questions. That's why part of the reason why you're a host. But I would say it's a great question. Okay. My initial answer is that I think it should be radically different. My concern that I've seen is that we are somehow maybe trying to just lift CX and put it straight into EX. And I agree there are certain components of it that absolutely will work, like employee listening strategy, customer listening strategy. Like, where do you show up? How do you listen? Where do you listen? What questions are you asking? Where are you being curious? But then, of course, it's the same old question: is the outcomes and the insights from that. It still comes back to, I think, different to CX, is the how we then solve those in a human-centric approach, not just going at it from a typical program improvement approach. It's using a design human-centric approach to go even deeper into the problem, not just taking it from a listening strategy as an example. And then the other ones for me is the behavior or how you engage that audience is vastly different. So you probably have more channels and you have more touch points, I think, is my current thinking on a customer experience versus EX. No, EX is more touch points, actually.
Yeah.
And I think, but in those touch points, you have a much more intrinsic and probably much more intimate relationship and closeness with that audience than you do your customer, because they walk into your buildings every day. They see you for who you are as an organization. You could create the best brand externally that a customer perceives you in a certain way, but actually internally, your employee could be perceiving you in an extremely different way, both in terms of your practices, your culture, your principles. And so I think that for me is then how you're then designing for that, how you're creating that is very, very different. And of course, then you can just use the old principles, journey mapping. Of course, you can journey map both. And I think that's a really important tool to use, because then what if you then start to join those journey maps together and see those intersections where employee and experience and customer experience come together. And that's another area. I think that's in our roadmap for the future as well, is we're still talking about that a lot, CX in and I think that hasn't really been achieved as much as I think is possible. And I think that's just because of maturity of EX. And I think as that becomes more mature and we get cleverer with it and more intentional, I think then we're going to see those we're going to be able to, those intersections between the two are going to be far clearer for organizations to really start shaping and measuring, of course, but creating real impact in all of those different human experiences in that moment.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'll just throw in another observation from my end as well, is that
go for it.
Customer experience is very transactional usually, and it's quite linear as an experience. You go in, you make a decision, you purchase something, and you have a very set amount of touch points. And some very clear things that you do or can do, whereas a lot of other experiences, be it being an employee or being a patient or being a student, has more touch points and is less linear. It's more a loop where you go back and forth between the same points, but with different people. And a lot of your touch points are actually not tools or, digital interfaces. They're people.
Yep.
And people have a huge impact on each other. And it's over time. So it depends on where you are in your life. So there are a lot of factors that play in where you, I think you have to kind of see how people move through the organization in different ways. So it's more multifaceted, but I totally agree with you. I think it's a little bit about cracking the code on respecting the complexity of it without making it complicated to deliver a solution. And sometimes that's probably where we do get stuck, because people get a little bit overwhelmed with the multitude of options.
And this is just to build on what you just said there. I think for the experience economy enthusiasts out there, they probably heard what I heard is, when we talk about customer, most organizations, obviously it's a cost center primarily, unless you obviously have retention or upsell, etc. But it's all about service design, right? It's about it's all about time well spent. It's about time well saved, not spent, time saved. So it's about spending less time with your customer. It's about making it efficient, making it quick, easy, and fast for your customer to engage with you, but at minimal cost, at a good, whereas experiences by design is about time well spent. So where in the moments do you create, these personal moments that are revealed over time? And that's the big distinction and the characteristics between a service and experience is time well saved versus time well spent. So I think that's also a big distinction as well between CX and EX. And of course, you can have time saved on EX just through booking a holiday, and HR systems now becoming so much better now for our consumerized experience, but it's internally within an organization, and that's cool. But then it's like building on that into building those experiences. So
there
very
are definitely
cool.
transactional pieces in there.
Always.
Always.
Good. So that gives everybody a bit of a glimpse into our Shani and Steve show.
To our brains.
Totally. The Shani and Steve brain show. There we go. We're just going to keep adding to it. So that's where we are. Look, Shani, thank you so much. Grateful for you joining. We're going to have a load of fun. And I'm really excited to see where this takes us, and of course, building out this audience and sharing out the learning. So thank you again. And for everyone out there, keep listening. Please, obviously, click like, click subscribe. Does mean an awful lot to the podcast, of course. And keep an eye out for those pings and updates as we release our future episodes of the Experienced Designers.
And come with your questions and suggestions.
Please do. That's really important. Very important, because we want to be fed by you, and we want to really kind of we serve you, the audience. At the end of the day, we're never short of things to delve into, but we would love to obviously shape it around audience as well. So please do get in touch and share, and we will always pick up and respond and come back to you. So look, until the next time, thank you all for listening, and
thank you.
See you next time. Thank you.
See you next time.
And there you have it, another episode of the Experienced Designers podcast. Thank you so much to my guest, Dana Wasson. Pleasure to have you on the show. And of course, as always, if you wish to contact Dana, all of the links are in the show notes as always. So look, thanks ever so much for listening. And until the next time, bye for now.